Excellent. I'd like to welcome everyone back to our closing plenary session. We're excited to see you. At this point now, I'd like to introduce Cam Montgomery. He is with the Arizona Department of Housing, and he'll be talking a bit about the programs available through the state. Cam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amy. So good afternoon, everyone. As we're approaching the afternoon, I appreciate you all sticking with us here. I'm going to try to be brief, but as Amy said, I'm Keon Montgomery, the Assistant Deputy Director for the Arizona Department of Housing over the Housing and Community Development Programs. And one of the core functions of my division is to basically distribute federal and state funds for the development of affordable housing, development and rehabilitation. And so the department receives funding annually that we distribute for those purposes throughout the state. We receive funding from the federal government in the form of home funds, national housing trust funds, and one of our biggest sources, the low-income housing tax credit program, where we receive our 9% tax credit allocation, as well as our 4% tax credits that we have available. And then one of our newer sources, the State Housing Trust Fund, has been very helpful in providing gap financing and helping to get some of our other developments that may have some challenges off the ground, or developments with some that are much more unique in nature that may not fit into some of the federal boxes. We're able to use those funds to basically continue the work that you all are doing out there and to make sure that we get units built. Now, I've sat through both of the two of the earlier sessions and tried to listen for what's something more unique I might be able to provide, or a way that I could provide some additional information to the group. And I actually sort of reworked some of the info that I have, and I wanted to share my screen if I can. I put together a really quick PowerPoint, so hopefully this will work out. I apologize, Amy, I said at the beginning I wasn't going to use one, but I switched it up.
It's okay, Kian. We're not seeing your screen though. Craig, can you assist, please?
Okay. On my side, it says you are screen sharing.
Yeah, you should still be able to override.
Oh, you know what? It says view options. There's view options, and yes, now we're seeing your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So one of the things I wanted to highlight, right? So we're talking about funding sources and where to locate them and where to find them. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I drove home is just the importance of the tax credit program, right? So I'm going to highlight 3 developments pretty quickly with the time that I have. And so this first one, Milagro on Oracle, located in Tucson. This is a 9% tax credit project that's about as smooth as you want one to be, right? So you've got your tax credit equity, you've got funds from the city of Tucson, and then you've got your private loan. So not a lot of additional sources brought to this deal to get it off the ground. But what I want to draw your attention to, total development costs of $19.7 million, but the tax credit equity was essentially 90% of what the developers needed in order to build this project. So that goes to highlight just how important 9% tax credits can be. And so anyone interested in developing affordable housing, you really want to make sure you understand the 9% tax credit program, and you understand how to bring those funds to your project. You understand the scoring that takes place, because that's going to be one of the largest sources that you bring to the table. Highlighting another project, this is a 4% project that we had. This is Centerline 1. And now this one looks more like what we've been talking about today, where we're bringing in a ton of soft sources to bring this through. So the developers here were not only able to maximize the low-income housing tax credit program, but also the state housing tax credit program, as well as some other programs that ADOH has in terms of the National Housing Trust Fund. They hit Maricopa County as a local source, as well as the city of Glendale for portion 2. But even in this scenario, 43% of the funds are coming from tax credit equity. And you have a bank loan of 23. So I would say, about half of the funds coming from the bank loan, and then 43% are coming from the low-income housing tax credits. So it's a significant source that you really have to make sure that you're educating yourself on the qualified allocation plan and how you can work some of those sources into your project. And for good measure, I threw in a third, I believe. Did not going. Here we go. Reserve at Thunderbird. So Reserve at Thunderbird, again, this is a 9% tax credit project. They did bring in a fair amount of soft sources and total development cost at 44 million. But if you look at the tax credit equity, that still represented 51% of the financing they needed in order to bring this project to fruition. And so what I really wanted to do in this presentation, and I'll stop sharing at this moment, is to just highlight the importance of the tax credit program. There's a lot of funding sources out there that you can research and understand, but the importance of the tax credits and how much they're going to fund a project is key. For those of you who may not have joined at the very beginning of the presentation or the beginning of the workshops, there was a link posted to funding source list that was put together, I believe, by Vitalis, and that list is pretty comprehensive. I reviewed that. It's got all the sources I can think of are listed on there. And so if you're interested in really getting into developing affordable housing, I'd say start researching those funding sources, getting familiar with those products and how you can utilize those products for the specific development you want to build. But you really want to hone in on the low-income housing tax credit program because that's going to bring in 50% or more of the financing you need.
That's perfect, Keon. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions right now? Questions that you'd like to share in the chat or verbally? Please feel free to unmute.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So being kind of like a one-man show right now, is there any consulting agencies that would help assist in putting together a team for what I'm trying to do? Somebody I could say, okay, here's what I'm trying to do, and they just kind of assist in gathering, the best sources to develop a team to go forward.
There are some consultants that are willing to assist. And as was mentioned, I think in one of the other presentations, there's some partnerships that can be struck, whether you want to partner with existing nonprofits that are developing or even for-profit organizations. But if you want to go the consultant route, I would say, reach out to me. I don't know if my contact information is provided, but you can reach out to me and we have a list of consultants that we keep and we provide to anyone who's interested.
Oh, can you post like your number or email?
I can put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Questions, comments? Again, we have so much expertise among the participants as well as through the speakers. Anything else that you might like to share from your perspective?
Sure. This is Greg
Yes,
in
please.
Scottsdale. I just wondered if we could have a conversation about the Not in My Backyard. I mean, it's such an important part of developing a project. And I wonder if we could do a separate kind of webinar or something just related to what are good approaches to community outreach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig. Absolutely a very critical issue. That's part of the impetus for the Home is Where It All Starts campaign, is to try and increase acceptance of affordable rents and mortgages and to reshape that narrative. So really critical point there. Kathy, looks like you have a question. Would you like to unmute?
Yes, there was brief mention of funding for renovation, but most of what we've talked about is building. And my understanding is there are a lot of housing units, particularly older small homes, that could be acceptable for affordable housing, but they need to be brought up to standard. Can you talk a little bit about how one organization goes about seeking funding for something like that?
That's a good question. I would say the majority of the sources that the Department of Housing receives, we are distributing to multifamily, but there are sources from time to time that we have put out for single family home. And some of that, whether it's weatherization program, and there may be some upgrades that can be done through that program. If the home itself needs a full rehab, I think there may be sources at some of the local jurisdictions, whether it's CDBG funds that can be utilized for rehabilitation, or even home funds at the local level can be used for rehabilitation as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a critical issue. And we will be sending out the housing chart to all of you, the links to the recordings, the presentations, and the agenda that will all be posted on the Vilas website. So we'll be sure to include some links to resources to renovate homes. The point about the need to retain affordable housing, not just create it, is absolutely important, and definitely one that needs to be part of the conversation. Thank you, Kian, so much. I really appreciate your partnership and your presentation. At this point now, I'd like to turn the mic over to Sarah with the Arizona Community Foundation to help us wrap up this webinar and to point to things to come. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, Kian. The LIHTC conversation was very robust in the first session that I was in with FSL. So some resources were shared there, and I'm glad we got to touch on that. I'm putting out.
Sorry, Sarah, it looks like you just muted yourself possibly, or maybe someone else did, but there you go.
There we go. Okay, I just put a link in the chat for resources to what I'm now going to discuss. And what I'll start with is hopefully what may be 2 other pieces of financial tools in some of your toolkits that you can lean on and use us as a financial resource here at the Arizona Community Foundation. So I oversee our affordable housing development funds. And right now we have 2. We have a pre-development loan fund. This lending tool was created, I think, ahead of its time in 2007. And over the length of the lifetime of this, we have contributed to the funding of over 66 housing projects that have turned into 3,600 new units across the state for low and moderately low income households. And so what we measure is, units produced of the families and individuals that are living there during its lifetime, but also the sustainability of the fund and proving that this type of financing model is sustainable long-term. We have had the capital, we're on the 3rd round of recycling the capital in this fund. So it goes out 0% interest rate, no application fees, no origination fees, 24-month time frame. We loan right now, we're up to $200,000 on a project. And then the capital comes right back in to be redeployed. And so we found that successfully helpful, especially in today's interest rate environment. So consider us as a resource if you have pre-development loan fund needs. The second is our Metro Phoenix Affordable Housing Collaborative Loan Fund. This came online just last month, and part of the offshoot of this collaborative fund is what you're witnessing here today, where we put forward a collaborative of about 30 different stakeholders, including MAG and Vitalist and the Department of Housing and others, and putting on webinars on outside of the funds that we have. And to the point that was just brought up, we do have money in this pool that's for the preservation or production of units. So up to 130,000, 0% interest, no fees on this 2-year time frame. And then we also have grants available up to 50,000 for capacity building, whether it's hiring a contractor, bringing someone onto your team. We have capacity building grants that you can access to, and we have about 8 of those available with the funds that we currently have. So we're hoping to deploy these funds. I know there's a lot of nonprofit affordable housing developers on this call. The link is there if you want to get more information or reach out to myself. I'd be happy to talk you through this. And I think next slide will be great as we wrap this up. So we're right on time here. So I just wanted to end with there's resources and then some information we want to hear from you. The NIMBYs, the LIHTC, there were some zoning discussions. Where do we go from here? But as far as everything you heard on today's call, you can of course go to vitalishealth.org to find the recordings of these sessions. Go to homeiswhereitallstarts.org to hear more about affordable rent and mortgage tools. I really appreciate it. I hope that you all found this webinar helpful, and that you maybe made a connection or found a new tool that you could use to utilize and support your work. A couple of things I heard more than 3 or 4 times was collaboration and team approach. And I think that our successes in this space are shaped and shared by our ability to align our interests to solve this housing crisis that we're having here. So thank you all for being on the call. Take 1 more minute to fill out the survey so that we know that we're on track and we can provide you with resources, information, and educational webinars like this moving forward, pertaining to the needs that you have. But thank you all for being here today.